Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
I want you to imagine for a second that you are the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar cruise line.
Oh man, high-stress job on a good day.
Right, exactly. So you've got these two floating cities, each carrying thousands of vacationing passengers, plus, a massive crew. And they're navigating these planned, highly lucrative winter itineraries.
Routine stuff. Yeah.
Totally routine. But then practically overnight, a geopolitical conflict erupts and completely closes off the only maritime exit door to the ocean you're operating in. Like, what do you even do?
I mean, it is the ultimate logistical nightmare. And the wild part is it's not some hypothetical scenario we're just brainstorming. It is exactly what we are seeing play out across the global cruise map right now.
Yeah.
The structural forces of the entire industry are just shifting under our feet.
I always think the best way to look at the global cruise industry today is to think of it kind of like a massive pressurized water system.
I like that. Because you have all this capital, right? All these ships, all this intense passenger demand, and it flows through very specific global channels. So if you put a sudden kink in the hose in one part of the world, say, a blocked strait in the Middle East, that water pressure doesn't just disappear.
Oh, it has to burst out somewhere else.
Exactly. The pressure forces the water into entirely new, sometimes really unexpected channels.
Which is fundamentally redrawing where cruise lines deploy their fleets.
Yeah.
And today, we can really trace the slow of that pressure. Like, we're looking at how a severe disruption in the Arabian Gulf has just totally exposed the deep vulnerabilities of these legacy mega itineraries. Yeah. And then, we can follow that rerouted capital straight over to Southeast Asia, where the Philippines is using this exact shift to just completely transform itself into a luxury hub.
Which is fascinating.
Oh, it really is. And finally, we can even look at how this whole global ripple effect is surging back to North America, flooding development money into, of all places, former industrial waterfronts like Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into the Buffalo of it all, but let's start right at the kink in the hose, as we said. The Middle East.
Right.
Because over the past few months, the vulnerability of traditional shipping routes became incredibly clear. We saw TUI Cruises finally manage to return two of their massive vessels, the Mein Schiff 4 and the Mein Schiff 5, to revenue service in the Mediterranean.
Right. Finally.
Yeah, but this was after a grueling 3-month interruption that essentially, it basically held those ships hostage to geography.
It did. Because these two vessels, they were operating standard winter programs in the Arabian Gulf, which for years has been a highly profitable, totally routine deployment for European cruise lines.
That's right. They're just looking for those warm weather winter routes.
Exactly. Right? But in late February, military strikes in the region escalated dramatically.
Yeah.
And this led to the suspension of the entire cruise season there, and, critically, the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz to civilian maritime traffic.
And for anyone unfamiliar with the maritime map, the Strait of Hormuz is not just some, minor canal you can easily bypass.
No, not at all.
It is a massive, highly volatile choke point right between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. An average of 20 million barrels of oil flow through it every single day.
It's huge.
Yeah. So when the security situation there deteriorates, maritime insurance rates just absolutely skyrocket, and the passage becomes, effectively impassable for a commercial passenger vessel.
And the thing is, TUI Cruises was not alone in this trap. There were 6 major cruise ships suddenly caught in this geopolitical bottleneck.
6? Wow.
Yeah, 6. Alongside the 2 Mein Schiff vessels, you have the MSC Eurybia, the Celestial Discovery, the Celestial Journey, and the Arroya.
So they're all just stuck.
Pretty much. Mein Schiff 4 was held up in Abu Dhabi, and Mein Schiff 5 was just idling in Doha. And they sat there for about 2 months while the corporate offices were scrambling.
I can only imagine the panic in those offices.
Oh, yeah. They had to cancel months' worth of planned itineraries in Europe and the Middle East, all while trying to figure out how to physically extract these multi-million-dollar assets.
And this is the part of the story that I think requires some real, logistical scrutiny, because when a cargo ship gets delayed, right, the containers just sit on a dock. Who cares?
Right, exactly.
But a cruise ship is like a biological moving entity. The Mein Schiff 5 carries over 2,500 passengers and roughly 1,000 crew members.
It's literally a floating town.
Yeah. You can't just, throw a ship of that size into reverse and back out of the Gulf. People have flights booked, vacations planned, and there are finite food and fuel supplies. So how does a cruise line execute a pivot of that magnitude when the primary transit route slams shut?
Well, they had to initiate an unprecedented extraction plan.
Oh,
By mid-April, TUI realized the Strait of Hormuz was not going to open up safely anytime soon.
right.
So the only way out was to reroute these massive vessels entirely around the continent of Africa.
You can't.
No, a full journey down the eastern seaboard of Africa, around the Cape of Good Hope, and then back up the western coast to get to the Mediterranean.
But wait, you cannot take thousands of vacationing passengers on a multi-week, completely unplanned detour around an entire continent.
Oh, you absolutely cannot.
Yeah.
The fuel costs alone are astronomical, but the passenger logistics, impossible. So they had to arrange mass airlifts.
Wow.
Yeah, they flew the thousands of passengers, along with all the non-essential crew members, back to their home countries. They stripped the operation down to the absolute bare minimum, leaving only the essential maritime and engineering crew on board for what they call shipkeeping.
Okay, so they essentially turned these massive, vibrant luxury liners into ghost ships, just burning fuel to navigate around Africa.
Ghost ships is exactly the right term.
Yeah.
And a very tense navigation at that. The exit out of the Gulf was highly sensitive.
I bet.
In fact, the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations recorded a report of a splash near the Mein Schiff 4 as it sailed in a convoy off the coast of Oman. It was actually flanked by the Mein Schiff 5 and the MSC Eurybia at the time.
A splash, like a projectile.
Yeah, an unexplained splash. Now, there were no injuries or damage reported across the 6 trapped ships, but an unexplained splash near a commercial vessel in a conflict zone. It really highlights the severe security environment these crews were navigating.
That is terrifying for the crew.
Extremely.
Mm.
But they eventually sailed all the way around Africa, met back up with the rest of their hospitality crews in South Africa and Malta, and prepared for the restart.
Man, the financial crater left by an operation like that has to be massive. Like, you're refunding thousands of passengers, flying them home at the last minute, paying for weeks of fuel with literally zero onboard revenue, and canceling all those future sailings.
Yeah, TUI Group actually quantified the damage in their recent earnings report. They took a 20 million euro hit directly attributable to the Middle East conflict.
20 million euros, just
Yeah.
gone.
It's just gone.
Yeah.
To clarify, that's a 20 million euro reduction in their operating profit for the quarter.
Mm.
And they also noted that while their first half occupancy was strong, like 93%, it would have been 98% without what they termed the Iran effect.
Wow. And I think the broader takeaway here isn't just about, one cruise line having a bad quarter.
Right, right.
It exposes a massive structural flaw in how the whole industry has operated for the last 20 years. The legacy model relies so heavily on these global repositioning routes, right? Moving massive ships from the Med to Asia or the Middle East, depending on the season.
It's an endless loop.
But those mega itineraries rely entirely on tight maritime choke points, like the Suez Canal or the Strait of Hormuz remaining peaceful. And when those routes become vulnerable to geopolitical shocks, the entire deployment strategy just falls apart.
Exactly. Which forces the industry to diversify.
Yeah.
I mean, you can no longer put a fleet of 5,000 passenger ships into a region that might get locked from the outside.
Too much risk.
Way too much risk. So cruise lines are actively mitigating future risks by searching out regions that offer political stability, robust domestic markets, and geographic safety.
And when a multi-million-dollar asset can't safely navigate the Gulf, the cruise line's only choice is to deploy it somewhere else. Which brings us to the biggest beneficiary of that geographical scramble right now, Southeast Asia, and specifically the Philippines.
Yeah, the tourism attaché for the Philippines, Gerard Panga, openly acknowledged this dynamic. He noted that all these flight disruptions and security concerns tied to the Middle East are actively encouraging North American travelers to look at Asia instead.
Instead of their traditional European or Middle Eastern vacations.
Exactly. And this is vital because North Americans already represent the largest inbound demographic for Southeast Asia.
The demand is clearly pivoting. I mean, the projections coming out of the Philippines are staggering. They are expecting their cruise passenger volume to nearly triple by 2026.
Triple. That's huge.
Yeah, we are looking at a jump to roughly 75,000 passengers, up from just under 25,000 in 2025. But there is a glaring statistical paradox in their projections.
Wow.
Yeah. Despite expecting 3 times as many passengers, the actual number of ship calls, like the physical times a ship docks at a port, is projected to drop from 136 down to about 128.
Okay, on paper, Tripling your passenger count while lowering your ship traffic sounds mathematically impossible.
Right. Like, how does the infrastructure support 3 times the people with fewer ships arriving?
It fundamentally comes down to the architecture of the ships entering the market and the geography of the destination itself.
Okay, break that down.
Well, Dr. Paulo Benito Tugbang from the Philippines Department of Tourism pointed out that this surge is largely being driven by luxury yachts and expedition lines, not the traditional megaships. You have to remember, the Philippines is an archipelagic nation.
Made up of over 7,000 islands, right?
Exactly. The natural marine environment simply cannot handle a 5,000-passenger floating resort pulling up to a delicate coastal ecosystem.
Yeah, if they wanted to host those massive ships, they would have to execute massive dredging operations, pour thousands of tons of concrete, and completely industrialize these pristine island ports.
Which destroys the very thing that tourists are paying to see in the first place.
Right, nobody wants to go to a tropical paradise and look at a concrete shipping terminal.
Exactly. So instead of trying to compete with heavily industrialized ports like Miami or Barcelona, the Philippines is leaning into its natural limitations. They are attracting brands like Swan Hellenic, the Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection, Ponant, and Noble Caledonia.
This is such a brilliant operational shift. It is basically the equivalent of realizing that instead of forcing a massive double-decker tour bus down a fragile, narrow cobblestone street, you restrict access and send a fleet of luxury town cars instead.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. You prevent the infrastructure from collapsing under the weight of mass tourism, but you charge a significantly higher premium for the intimate experience.
And these ultra-luxury vessels are specifically built for this kind of navigation. The Ritz-Carlton yachts, for example, carry roughly 450 guests. Some of the Noble Caledonia ships cap out around 118 guests.
Wow, that is tiny.
Yeah, very tiny. And because they have much shallower drafts, they can physically weave through the islands, dropping anchor in secluded bays and utilizing tenders to bring small groups ashore.
Oh, so they don't even need deep water docks.
Nope. They can island hop in a way that massive heavy draft megaships simply cannot. It transforms the Philippines into a premium, high-yield luxury destination rather than a high-volume, low-margin transit stop.
But the strategy isn't solely reliant on wealthy North Americans flying across the Pacific either. There is a really fascinating domestic economic engine driving this growth as well.
A very crucial one, yeah. The Philippines is actively developing Subic Bay as a home port to cultivate their own domestic cruise market.
Which makes total sense.
Right. The country has a rising middle and upper class citizens who are gaining disposable wealth and looking to experience luxury cruising for the first time. And they want to do it without having to fly all the way to Miami or Rome.
Yeah, that's a long flight.
Exactly. Local tourists are becoming a primary source market for round-trip sailings originating right out of Subic Bay. And when you combine that emerging local wealth with the region's renowned hospitality workforce and widespread English language proficiency, it just creates a highly sustainable ecosystem for a booming cruise sector.
It's so smart. So the pressure in the global cruise system is clearly pushing capital toward Asia, but that same desire for safe, novel, and smaller-scale destinations is also driving a massive resurgence much closer to home.
Oh, for sure.
We are seeing a boom in North American domestic cruising, specifically within the Great Lakes. And at the epicenter of this domestic renaissance is, surprisingly, Buffalo, New York.
Right. I mean, decades ago, the idea of Buffalo serving as a marquee player in the luxury cruise industry would have seemed highly improbable to most analysts.
Definitely.
But the passenger data in the Great Lakes tells a very different story today. The region has seen explosive growth, jumping from roughly 9,000 passengers in 2010 to more than 25,000 in 2023.
And Buffalo is capitalizing on this exact moment. The state is backing a massive waterfront revitalization project championed by Governor Kathy Hochul with a total investment of $151 million over 2 decades.
That's a huge commitment.
Yeah. A key piece of this is building a permanent outer harbor cruise terminal at Slip 2. The construction is slated to start in July 2026, with an opening targeted for summer 2028.
And the strategic intent behind this terminal is what makes it so interesting. Historically, Buffalo functioned as a bypass point within the Great Lakes.
Just fly over a country, but for ships.
Exactly. Ships navigating between major hubs like Toronto and Cleveland would sail right past western New York. The goal of this new permanent terminal is to capture that maritime traffic and transform Buffalo from a geographical middleman into a dedicated, high-value destination.
And the economic mechanics of this shift are already proving out, even while they operate out of a temporary berth near the Erie Basin Marina. They recently welcomed the American Patriot, which is a new U.S.-flagged ship operated by American Cruise Lines.
Nice.
It's a small vessel carrying just 130 passengers. Visit Buffalo Niagara expects 7 cruise calls this year. But the striking metric here is the financial yield. Those 7 visits from a 130 passenger ship are projected to generate a regional economic impact of $1 million.
That is the power of the economic multiplier effect in boutique cruising right there.
But wait, how exactly does a ship carrying only 130 people generate $1 million for a city in just 7 visits?
Well, it's because of the passenger demographic and how they spend their time ashore. I mean, these are not passengers walking off a megaship to buy a T-shirt at a port-owned terminal and getting right back on board.
Right.
These are highly engaged, affluent travelers. They disembark and immediately disperse into the local economy.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, they are paying for excursions to the Buffalo AKG Art Museum, touring the Naval and Military Park, visiting Frank Lloyd Wright's Martin House, and obviously traveling up to Niagara Falls. They eat in local restaurants. They hire local transport.
They're actually experiencing the city.
Exactly. Furthermore, as Patrick Kaler from Visit Buffalo Niagara pointed out, this acts as a highly effective marketing tool.
Oh, interesting.
The passengers get a curated taste of Buffalo's cultural assets, which motivates a high percentage of them to return for longer land-based vacations in the future.
That completely rewrites the economic playbook for domestic waterfronts. And the cruise lines are clearly seeing the demand. I mean, American Cruise Lines has already opened their Great Lakes itineraries for 2027 and 2028 because their 2026 departures are almost entirely sold out.
Wow.
And Victory Cruise Lines is also committing to bringing their 200 passenger ships to Buffalo starting in 2027.
However, accommodating this new wave of domestic cruising requires solving a very specific architectural problem.
Okay, what's that?
Well, building a permanent cruise terminal from scratch to serve boutique ships is incredibly complicated due to federal regulations. Jim Rowe, a principal at Bermello at Jamil and Partners, outlined the friction point here. You have to balance heavy United States customs and border protection requirements with the intimate, small-scale nature of the Great Lakes fleets.
Oh, because the federal security apparatus is basically a blunt instrument?
Exactly.
Customs and border protection mandates were largely designed around processing massive influxes of international arrivals at, like, mega ports in Florida or Texas.
That's right. Thousands of people at once.
So they require highly specific square footage, heavy security screening infrastructure, holding areas, and massive processing lanes. How do you integrate all of those strict federal security mandates into a facility designed to service a boutique ship carrying only 130 people?
Right. If you just build to the federal spec without considering the passenger experience, you end up with a massive, sterile warehouse.
Yeah, which totally ruins the vibe.
Guests paying premium prices for an intimate, luxury riverboat experience would disembark into a cavernous, echoing security checkpoint.
Not exactly a warm welcome to Buffalo.
No, not at all. So to solve this, the architects have to right-size the infrastructure. They are designing the Slip 2 terminal to satisfy all the CBP compliance rules, but they are wrapping it in a civic space.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. They are integrating public access elements directly into the footprint, adding a multi-use path, a public promenade, and a sunset seating area. By embedding the required security infrastructure within an active public park environment, the terminal feels like a welcoming piece of the city's waterfront, rather than a militarized border checkpoint.
It is a really fascinating solution. It proves that the future of the industry isn't just a race to build bigger ships that pack more people into the exact same 5 Caribbean ports.
Right, we're kind of past that point.
It is equally about precision engineering, curating localized, highly specific experiences that tap into entirely new passenger demographics. The Great Lakes offers a domestic, scenic, historically rich itinerary for travelers who want deep cultural immersion without the hassle of crossing an ocean or dealing with a 5,000-person buffet line.
Honestly, when we step back and look at the whole board, we are witnessing an industry proving its resilience through rapid evolution.
Yeah.
Whether cruise lines are forced to navigate severe geopolitical blockades by rerouting fleets entirely around the African continent, or they're deploying shallow draft expedition yachts to protect the delicate archipelagos of the Philippines, or they are investing millions to revitalize a former industrial waterfront in Buffalo. The underlying machinery of cruise travel is adapting to external pressures faster than ever before.
And as a traveler, that continuous adaptation directly expands your map. You're no longer confined to the repetitive, high-volume loops of the standard Caribbean or Mediterranean routes.
Not at all.
The industry is actively deploying capital to build new infrastructure, both in the specialized design of the ships themselves and the architectural integration of the physical ports, to bring you to the most unexpected corners of the globe.
The sheer diversity of how you can access the water has never been broader. I mean, you can take a luxury yacht through a remote Southeast Asian island chain, or step off a boutique riverboat to tour Frank Lloyd Wright architecture in Western New York.
But, this profound shift toward smaller emerging destinations leaves us with a critical paradox to consider.
Yeah, it's not without its challenges.
Right. Because as these niche ports, whether it's the fragile ecosystems in the Philippines or the newly revitalized docks of the Great Lakes, as they become the new standard for travelers looking to escape megaship overcrowding, what happens to the inherent culture of these hidden gems?
That's the big question.
When the remote outpost inevitably becomes the main attraction, can the industry scale that intimacy without destroying exactly what made the destination special in the first place? It is a tension that both the cruise lines and all of us as travelers will have to navigate very carefully in the coming years. Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.